says live on there.
I know it always says live before it officially shows as live on the YouTube screen, but we are we are ready to go, ready for lunch.
Great. Welcome to the January 25th, 2021 Henrietta Town Board Workshop Meeting. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Here.
Councilmember Stafford,
Here.
Councilmember Safranek,
Here.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Wednesday's meeting, we have one special use permit for an outdoor truck parking area. There's no town board presentations, no public hearings. Nobody responded with anything that they wanted to cover, so I guess we can just jump to 17, right?
We had a discussion
We might
about
have
that
a few
already.
questions.
I thought I'd give everybody else the opportunity this week. And
So what ones do you want to cover? Well, actually, I'll touch on the first two. So the only thing I'm waiting on is confirmation from Monroe County DOT. In the latest traffic impact study, the response to that, they talked about that they believe that the proper remediation for that intersection would be a right-hand turn lane and three-way stop, or all-way stop, whichever way you want to look at it. That brings all of the component grades to, I think it was C or better. So in the major portion of the report, there's the current unsignalized situation, a signalized solution, which has a traffic light. But then they look at a couple different potential combinations of an all-way stop by itself and an all-way stop with the right-hand turn. And that one actually helps traffic in all directions. And somebody says, well, why? And the simple reason is when you have the second lane there with the ability to turn right, I can actually have two sets of cars go through at each stop sign from the direction that is the predominant direction of travel, which is from the north heading south.
Right.
Because of that, because people take turns then at a traffic that is always stop, that increases the rate at which the other people get a turn. So like I said, that appears to be the best solution. I did confirm with Jim Pond from Monroe County DOT that if they do that, we would widen the shoulder so as to have a bike lane there. And he and I are working on the final numbers for the, so one of the things we looked at when you look at the East River Road corridor, seeker mitigation fees, it specifies a particular amount. Sometimes the project, that's for general improvements. Sometimes projects require additional localized improvements. Now, one of the things, if that localized improvement is specific to their development, it doesn't count. In other words, it's additional. They just have to do it. So for example, if somebody puts in an office park and they are required to put a right turn entrance into the office park, that's not considered an improvement to the corridor because it doesn't help the traffic flow anywhere else. It just prevents their new instance from causing as much trouble, but it doesn't improve any of the existing traffic issues.
Gotcha.
So a localized improvement is one that not only helps mitigate the additional problems that they create, but that also improves the overall operation of the corridor, which again, if you remember, that's the whole purpose of this, of the East River Road Corridor Seeker Mitigation Fund. So the question then came up as to if you require the full general participation and all the localized participation, you can get to a fee which could become burdensome for the developer and could potentially lead to, lawsuits saying that it's unfair taxation or something along those lines. So we've been looking at a way we don't want all the dollars that go to the localized improvements to replace all the funds that are going to the general, because then we won't end up with enough money in the general fund. Because when you look at the way that was done to generate the fixes for the overall corridor, it worked on a presumption that all the funds from that, $800 per trip was going to go to the general improvement. So we tried a bunch of different formulas, and the one we're looking at right now, and I just need them to confirm, is that 50% of their local improvements would count towards their contribution to the overall corridor improvement. And then they would have to, so I'll give you an example. Excuse me. Let's say they own, based on the formula, they owe $90,000 to the general fund. Plus they have to make $100,000 local improvements. So 50 of that would count towards the general fund. They'd have to come up with the additional 140,000. Those are in round numbers how it works out for parcel E. So it's about 141,000. That doesn't include the sidewalk that we're asking them to do. But again, it's right along the numbers that they were talking about. They were expecting it to be $200,000. So again, while it's a steep cost to the developer to mitigate the issues, it doesn't move into the realm of being unreasonable, in my opinion. And like I said, strikes a good balance between the local improvements necessitated at the intersections near their development, while also putting some money towards the general improvement for the overall traffic flow of the overall corridor, to which they are adding a significant amount of traffic. So we're waiting to hear back from Monroe County DOT. If we don't have their commitment, I don't want to move on these. So we'll probably have them at the end of the agenda again, because again, once we approve it, we've lost that ability to essentially assess the seeker mitigation fees. But I don't want to pick a number that the county isn't also comfortable with.
Right.
What are the three types? There's general improvements for the corridor, there's local, and then do you consider sort of the special or the application specific to be a third category?
Yeah. So it would be, like I said, right turn entrance for their plaza or office park.
So they're going to apportion 50% of the local costs towards the general credit as a credit to the general?
That's the current proposal on the table.
Okay.
We looked at a bunch of different ones. That's the one that made the most sense to me. In the initial discussion with Jim, that seemed that, but he needed to bounce it by his team.
Okay.
Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't know how he's coming up with the decision, but he basically said he has to, think about it. So hopefully I'll hear back from him before Wednesday.
Would they pay that over to, if the county's okay with it, would the county install the stop signs or?
Yeah, so, right. So regardless of, a couple things on that. They would be, for the local improvements, they have the choice of either paying into the fund or doing the works themselves per specifications of Monroe County DOT.
Okay.
With that commitment, Monroe County, again, so the two things I asked is the confirmation on that formula. And the second thing is the commitment to do the all-way stop when the traffic dictates it. So they wouldn't do it until the traffic starts to come back online from COVID and hits. One of the things that they have to figure out, and again, we don't need to hold up their approval for this. We can work with the Monroe County DOT what the number is, but what that threshold is when they would then require or put in the four-way stop. The right turn lane, they can do at any time. Even if there isn't a stop sign there, a right turn lane actually helps, because as people slow down to make the turn, they're now not blocking other southbound traffic. So that can go in immediately, but they wouldn't want to put in the always stop signs until the numbers dictate that they're needed.
So is it between the four-way stop and the three-way stop?
There's no four-way, it's a T intersection.
Okay.
That's Scottsville. And East
Scottsville, West
River.
Henrietta Road,
That's
and
where the
East
right-hand
Henrietta
turn.
Road.
So Scottsville, West Henrietta Road is where the right turn lane would be?
The right turn lane is actually on East River Road,
Going
turning
on
into
Okay.
Scottsville, West Henrietta Road, because in the evening, that's where the majority of the traffic is today.
Okay,
The slowdown today you see on the westbound turning north, there's very little traffic that goes southbound, relatively speaking. So the slowdown you see there, where it could be minorly helped by a right turn lane, the big thing is it's all the people waiting to turn left to go out. If you putting the stop signs so that they can now take turns greatly improves that, because during the peak times, there's so much traffic coming by that there aren't a lot of gaps. You get gaps created coming southbound because of the light, but northbound, it's a long ways to a light. So you generally don't get good gapping in that direction, which is why if you look at the current conditions during non-COVID times, that particular component of the intersection gets a D or an F. It's just because of the long ways turning left. Again, coming southbound, there would be the right turn lane from East River Road onto West Henrietta, Scottsville, West Henrietta Road, because that's where the majority of the traffic that's going to that, again, they're coming from the north, turning right. So that essentially takes that large portion of what would otherwise hit the stop sign at the same time as the people in the other directions. Now a car can go south and a car can turn right at the exact same time. In fact, a car can turn right and a car can go northbound at the exact same time. So it just gives you the ability to clear all those cars out without delaying the people at the other stop signs. That's why the right turn southbound helps so much, because so much of the traffic is going in that direction. It will slow down the people who are going north and south, no doubt. But it slows them down from an A to a B or a C. And it gets rid of, like I said, all of the Fs. So.
what about is there any concerns about traffic going in and out of the apartment complex entrance right there on Scottsville, West Henrietta?
There is not. I mean, obviously a few residents have expressed that concern, but from a timing standpoint, there's not. There's just not enough traffic on that road to where they won't be able to find gaps, especially they're not all that far from the intersection. Now, again, if you leave it as an F and the traffic backs up far enough to where it's past that entrance, in which case it would also be potentially blocking Mickens Road, that's obviously problematic. But otherwise, according to the study, there's enough gaps for people to get out of there in a reasonable amount of time.
Okay.
And also remember that only half of the complex's traffic is coming out of the north entrance onto Scottsville, West Henrietta Road. The other half of the traffic is going out onto Moore Road.
Right.
So. Any other questions on that? So like I said, we'll put them at the end of we'll put these as the last two, and we'll see what the county has to say. But if we don't have those numbers firmed up yet, I think we want to wait, because again, once you issue a neg deck, you can't go back and say, oh, changed our mind.
Right.
So Don, I think I sent you guys the draft of all the stuff for the two historic properties. Don is going over it, and I'm sure he's going to have some recommended changes.
Some minor tweaks.
Is this what most people consider a minor tweak, or a Don Young minor tweak where the whole thing is red?
I'm not. I've got some. I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
I've got some good examples. I mean, we have some, for example, what we did with the library transfer that are significantly more in depth. So I'm going to need a little bit of time to work through that.
No problem.
But I think it's okay to approve it subject to the contract.
Right. Yeah, so we've got a couple of things he's working on, the resolution itself, as well as then there is a sales contract and a lease agreement with the idea that it's going to take a while for the sale to clear. In the meantime, we can essentially lease the facilities for $1 so we can start working on it.
I didn't have any problem with the resolution you proposed.
Okay. And then, as you can see also, we had moved the back line out a little bit further. We moved the sideline in a little bit so that we wouldn't have to really move much. The school district uses and when I say a little bit, I'm talking feet, as in single digit, but it was so that they can still get down that driveway to the garage where they park the, what do you call it? The student vehicle, the driver's ed vehicle. But they had agreed to allow us to move the back line back a little bit so as to get parking in behind the church where we can put our handicap spaces. And then what we did is on the north side, we ran the boundary line. It used to wedge out into the roadway. We brought it in so it doesn't go into the roadway, but to compensate, we essentially rotated it so it now runs parallel to the driveway. So again, the overall area is about the same, but it makes more sense in that there's no shared driveway access, all this other stuff. It's clear as to whose property. I did bump the back line out about a foot so that the property line would not bisect a tree. That way it's clear it's our tree, and we're responsible for it.
It was, we've had enough trouble with who owns what tree.
Exactly, that's what I said.
Yeah.
So,
As long as we know.
Yep. So, and the other thing I was looking for was visually identifiable marks. So we can give the surveyors clear instructions as to where we want the property lines. The idea is they'll go out, they'll stake it. Representatives from the town and school district will say, yep, that's what we both agreed on. And then they'll produce the final map to do the subdivision, and they'll create the meets and bounds and the whole 9 yards. The plan is to take all the other parcels and put them into one, and ours is going to be one parcel. Is there an issue, Don, in that regards? Do you know of that having, since they're not living facilities now, they're park facilities, is there any issue with having the church and the house in one parcel? I mean, we've got multiple parcels on a bunch of, or multiple buildings on a bunch of our parcels.
Yeah,
here.
I was thinking about zoning, and I mean, we could adopt a resolution basically exempting that from our zoning. That's common,
Right.
Where a town exempts its own property from zoning because it's for municipal uses.
Right. And I'd be fine with us saying that there cannot be anyone living there.
Yeah,
Because if it were still a house, it couldn't be in the same
Right.
parcel, right? Because it's
Right.
two different uses, but now it's going to be the same use, and they're both essentially, town facilities.
yeah. I mean, what zone is that in? Do you know what it's zoned? Is it zone?
I want to say it's R115, but I'm not
Okay.
positive.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think the commercial extends down that far, but I'd have to double check that. It's either R115 or it's the commercial.
Piggybacking off of that zoning issue is the one of subdivision. Is that something that can be administratively subdivided, do you know, or is that something we need to more formally handle?
Chris Martin will have to answer that because, in other words, normally, if it weren't the town, it would have, I think it's going to have to go in front of the planning board just because it's 5 parcels. Normally, we allow 2 parcels for administrative. Now, from a cost standpoint, it's a moot point for us because we pay ourselves our own fee, so.
Yeah.
But
We're just for our part up there.
we're taking 2 parcels, portions of 2 parcels and making 1 parcel out of that. And we're combining the remaining all the other parcels into one super parcel.
Okay.
That one currently, again, for school grounds, does have 2 structures on it, although one of those structures is the nunnery or rectory or whatever it was, is slated to come down at some point.
Okay.
And what will remain predominantly is a school building. But in other words, they're considering those non-historic outbuildings to be essentially, support buildings on school grounds.
So maybe you, Chris, and I can put our heads together just about what we want that process to look like. We have options that we can exempt it. We can go through the process. We can do a combination of that. I'm okay. So it probably just makes sense to put our heads together. The other thing I had thought about actually about the resolution is just to put in there a seeker statement, because technically we're supposed to seekerize the acquisition. I think we can just seekerize it from the standpoint of just of the acquisition, which obviously property changing hands isn't going to have any impact on the environment, but we should still recite that in the resolution. So I can add that if you want.
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay.
Do you want me to would it be a short form or?
Yeah, I would short form it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can write something up because again, there's no impact other than a positive impact on preserving the historical nature of the town, because for the school district to modify those buildings to meet school codes, they'd have to change them much more dramatically than we would.
Yeah, this would only address our acquisition of those 2 buildings.
I understand, but my point is the reason we're gaining them is so that the school doesn't have to modify it.
Right. It's a net positive impact.
Correct.
Yeah. Worse yet, I mean, modify it or let it fall apart.
Right.
Yeah. So you end up saving.
Well, because, right, they wanted to take down the house.
Yeah.
So this preserves the farmhouse.
Right.
Okay. Lead intent, it's nothing much. We'll have obviously more details as it comes in, but right now we're just getting our intent out there to be lead agency for the senior housing.
Steve, can I ask,
Hear more about that, or?
Did you want more? Again, there's not a whole lot of details other than they want to put in senior housing. Cornerstone Group wants to put in senior housing in the empty lot of the mall that used to be the General Cinema Theater. They have agreed to do low-cost senior housing. They will be coming in because of that, they'll probably come in for a shelter rent agreement. One of the things that I've been looking for is what kind of level of commitments, because we want to make sure, again, they don't commit to something and then later roll back the amount of affordable housing, and there's nothing in the shelter rent pilot agreement that enables us to say, hey, you need to meet these levels or the pilot goes away. So I definitely want that in the pilot, but again, that's more in the pilot negotiations than it is in the special use permit.
I just didn't know if they were kind of come in and, kind of put on a presentation like.
They are, but again, this is starting the 30-day clock. So it'll probably, if I had to guess, it's the second meeting in February that they'll be in.
Okay.
Even then, they won't be, the 30-day clock won't be up yet. So, I mean, we can't even rule on this until the first meeting in March.
when we move on to the next topic, I just wanted to, I don't know if there's a better time to do it, but just sort out the tree matters. I don't know if we have, I don't see any on here on this agenda. Do we not have any at this town board meeting?
There are none at this town board meeting
Okay.
that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Kevin or Becky, are you aware of any tree matters?
Steve, I am not aware of any up and coming ones.
So I suspect there may be some at the second meeting in February, because the first meeting in February is already a really full agenda, and it also happens to be the last day of taxes, so we're going to try to put as little on the agenda anything we have to get done, if it can wait till the second meeting in February, we're going to do that because we like our town clerks.
Fair
Well,
enough.
I think that there are some tree matters that Bill sent that email out, but they won't be coming to town board because they are past that deadline to appeal.
Yeah, so, you know, again, there were three that I'm aware of. One, we took care of at the last meeting and just read the minutes on it. So that one was essentially canceled, and it's going to be
Chris, why
revisited.
turn that thing off?
Not my phone. No problem. So that one will be revisited on May 15th. There's one that, on the other ones, to my knowledge, they're not arguing about whether to take down the tree. They're just saying that right now, because of the ground conditions, with the grounds not being frozen, they couldn't get in there. A tree removal company couldn't get in there.
Right.
And then I think the third one, was there one that was financial hardship?
When I keep that away, we're gonna visit.
Yeah, there's one that, yes, is having a hard time getting it done fast because of the cost.
Okay. So, I
But
mean.
that one's the one we said, we're gonna look at this again in May, I think.
Right.
No, that was a different one.
Okay.
That one, the one in May, the guy said the tree's not dead.
Yeah.
Cut away.
Right. So one of the things we've talked about is, you know, we're going to have an internal meeting to make sure it's clear, tighten it up a little bit in terms of the arborist seems to be taking what I'll call the safe approach. If it's at all questionable, get rid of it, which I understand. But we also have to balance that with reasonableness for the property owner. So, you know, there may come some that we say, hey, these are potentially is going to be a future endangering tree. If you have the opportunity, you may want to get it taken down. You know, but before it becomes, you know, a full-fledged problem that has to come down. You know, again, this is a new law and we're still working out the bugs of the system. So we're going to have a few of these that we have to intervene and correct. In terms of the last two, it's not uncommon for code enforcement to deal on individual basis with that. Basically, you know, the goal is to get stuff corrected, not to punish people. And so code enforcement has long had a thing where if the people are being reasonable and working towards a solution, they will, especially, you know, you see that quite often, that they'll recommend some solution to get it done and taken care of and corrected, rather than drag it out in court, which costs the town money, which costs the homeowner money. So they try to find working solutions whenever possible. So I think that's what's ultimately going to happen with these two, right? We have to be reasonable that if the ground conditions don't let you get in there to remove the tree for 3 months, we can't expect you to then have gotten it taken care of in 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just have to go with that. And like I said, we'll have to figure out when that happens. What my thought is that we would have code enforcement send a letter to the town board informing the town board of, you know, the conditions aren't going to tighten up. They're not going to be able to get in there until March. So we're going to, you know, essentially grant a stay, for lack of a better way to put it, until March. And that way, if the town board thinks if that's not the proper solution, the town board can then react to it and call a hearing. But that's kind of what we were looking at from the tree standpoint.
Thanks.
For number 7, for the Mahar Engineering, as you remember, when we were looking at the layout for the sewer garage, where we originally wanted to put it along the berm, it would have eaten into the yard too much, would have made it difficult for the trucks to pick up their plows. And so we decided to move it to where the last vestige of the old DPW is. Knock that old building down, but currently that's being used by the facilities and grounds folks. So we're going to look at building a pole barn. That would go where the berm was, because it's only 40 feet deep instead of 60 feet like the sewer garage. It won't eat into the yard. And then again, the sewer building would be over where the former DPW garage was. So we need some engineering. It's largely going to be pre-engineered trusses, but there's some load calculations that have to be done. So we reached out to Ahara Engineering, who's already doing the sewer, asked them to give us a cost to add it. It's a small amount. It's below my $8,000, but because it was part of a contract that came in front of this town board, we're bringing it back to the town board to modify the original contract. So
Okay.
it's again, not an increase in the cost of the sewer. It's doing an additional small building. The bids come in on Tuesday, so we'll get that information in and out into the resolution and out to you guys. As soon as that's ready, I'd like to send it out even before the final board packet goes out. That way you guys, if you have time, if we can have it done Tuesday night, then that way you guys have an evening to look at it instead of getting it just before the meeting. Anything you wanted to add to that, Chris, either of those?
No, Steve, I'm all set. Like I said, as soon as we get the results in, we'll process it as fast as we can, and we'll get the results to the board members so they can at least see what's going on.
Great, thanks.
That's it.
For the pilot agreement for remote solar, it took a lot of doing to get the school, the county especially, and the developer, the solar developer, all on the same page, but we're there.
Okay.
So we've got the solar agreement, so it's basically going in front of all of the respective boards, although I don't think it goes in front of the county ledge. I think the Comita organization has the ability to approve them.
Has anything changed as far as acreage or anything?
No, I mean, there's some fine tuning, but no, it's same size, same breakdown. It was predominantly legalese.
Okay.
In this one, we have Lou Marin is working on it because Don has done work with Delaware River Solar previously, so he exempted himself out of that. So, not exempted, that's not the right word, but conflicted.
Yeah.
Thank you. But like I said, that's ready to go. It does include all the stuff in there about, not necessarily in the pilot agreement, but in the authorization, the special use permit. We had all the 17 or 18 points in there, and that they have to do all these things in order to be able to get their permit to do the building. One of the things that's not in the pilot is the formal parcel ID number, because it hasn't been generated yet. Until they get the pilot in place, they didn't want to go through all the cost of doing the surveying and the clearing and the fence. Because if you remember, the way we wrote the law is that once they put up the fence, they are to survey that, and that becomes the parcel that's separated out for the solar.
Okay.
And then we decided to use the fence boundary because it is a discernible boundary, and there's none of this argument as to whether it's stuff inside or out, obviously all of their equipment is inside the fence. And if they want to include a drive around, that's okay. But clearly anything inside the fence can't be used for farming.
Right.
So it made a really logical point when we were doing the law to be the delineation between the two parcels.
Makes sense.
Steve, do you have any idea on the timing for this project? When they're going to break ground, when they're trying to go operational?
I do not. I think they're trying to get going this calendar year.
Okay.
But again, they've still got a ways to go.
Okay.
Because they're going to have to site all the stuff and, like I said, do the clearing for the fence
Okay.
and the stuff inside of it. And then they've also got to generate a soil conditions map because they're in an agricultural district. The exemptions that they used to have in place is because the rework of the parcels, they have to do the soil map analysis for those new parcels.
They've
So-
reached out on their conservation easements for the ag.
And they have to have in place a conservation easement. All those things have to be in place before they can get a building permit.
Okay.
So. Any questions on the vehicles
On,
or the lift?
on the lift, what did we, is that what we budgeted for? Should we recall?
Linda or Chuck, is that what we budgeted for?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I actually thought we had more in the budget than that for that.
We added a number of things at once, so that might be why you're remembering a larger number. The budget increased by more than just the lift.
Well, I thought it was just, when we talked about the lift, I
Gotcha.
thought, okay, I thought it was more.
Yeah, Steve, when we first talked about buying the lift, there was a higher number, but we researched it, knocked it down.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
That's good then.
That's what I was.
We decided to just declare the balance beam surplus. We may look at pulling everything off of it if somebody wants if we want to like sell the hardwood to somebody or give it to someone. We don't want to give it out as a beam because it's broken. And including there's someone had wanted to use it on their basement floor. They were going to take the legs off because the legs are broken. But there is a jagged piece of metal sticking out of the beam itself. So it really doesn't have good use as a balance beam going forward. So we're just going to scrap it. And like I said, if we can reclaim the wood so someone can use it instead of it going into dump, then we're going to do that. But it's not going to go out the door as a balance beam. We have at the executive session, we'll go over the recommendations from the selection committee. What we decided to do is all the applicants, there were 6 applicants interviewed for the 2 positions. So there's 1 opening on the Park and Rec Advisory Board, 1 opening on the Youth Board. And we basically, when we were interviewing them, we kept both positions in mind. In fact, we asked them if they had a preference serving on one or the other. And sometimes if their experience was specifically better suited towards one than the other, we let them know that we believe that. And but most of them, we didn't have to make that. In other words, as soon as we talked about the 2 boards, they typically steered towards one or the other, and it almost always matched what their experience was, which isn't surprising. Kevin, do you want to talk about the Jewish Community Center special event permit?
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I just want to bring to the board's attention that Ralph Morano from JCC, along with Jeff Springett from Rochester Events, they approached me last week. And if you remember back in 2019, they have a special event permit for day camps during the day, and they're looking to expand on that to have evening events and the weekends for some public participation. Basically, if you see the memo that I handed out, theater events, some music. I just want to bring it to your attention because the possibility of going through to 9 o'clock, maybe even 10 o'clock is what they're looking to do as far as the noise in that area. Just want to get some feedback from the board if they feel that they had any issues with that.
We were gonna tell them that all amplified sound has to stop at 9 o'clock or any other very loud sound, because whereas there is no residential homes immediately adjacent to them, there are on Karen Lee Drive across the canal.
Right.
So sound will probably travel fairly well across that canal. There is some screening, but not a ton. But that was our concern, is for people in that neighborhood. So that's what.
Just for the board's information, also looking through the noise ordinance, there really isn't anything that would preclude them from going past 9 o'clock. The only thing we have is our construction noise has to stop at 9. They're agreeable to 9 o'clock to stop the amplification. But again, nothing in the code that really would prohibit it.
Except it would be on the permit.
Well, exactly. The other thing that came up kind of today regarding this is Ralph had actually mentioned some partnerships with other businesses in town and from Rochester looking to bring in their own music, bringing in their own bands and that playing. The possibility of having alcohol, which would be a special use permit through the town board. No alcohol will be served obviously during the day camps with kids, but also for the JCC run evening events that would not have alcohol, but just be those partnerships.
Okay. Well, obviously, if they decide to go that route, they're going to have to get on the special permit agenda.
Yes, yeah, they're aware of that.
Any questions on that? Thanks, Kevin.
All right, thank you.
Becky, you want to discuss your town clerk report?
Yeah, so I had sent that to you guys earlier. I don't know if you have any questions. Obviously, there were a lot of changes between 2019 and 2020, but I tried to take note of everything that I was aware of to answer any questions you may have. But if you guys would like to ask anything, I'm here.
Anybody have any questions? From what I said, I haven't gotten through it all, but from what I've read, it looked thorough and informative. Well, if anybody has any questions afterwards, you can reach out to Becky, preferably not on a day when they're crushed with taxes.
Yeah, obviously, you know how to get a hold of me if you have any questions on anything there.
Great, thank you.
Budget transfers, if you've got any questions as I run down these, just call out. We've got 3 donations. I would like to reissue the Eagle Scout for Parker Hunt. For those who don't remember, we'd originally done this December of 2019 for a January ceremony, and then one of the person he was going to name mentor couldn't make it to the meeting, so they pushed back into March, and then COVID hit. He has since gone off to college. Well, he was back in town on winter break, so we had the ceremony, but they didn't give me enough notice. I don't know where the original signed and stamped certificate is. It's somewhere for safekeeping. But as I read the resolution, I just printed out a new copy and read it to him there and told him we'd email him the finish. I kind of edited it on the fly because he's no longer a senior. He's already off at college. So I decided rather than dig up the old one, we're just going to reissue one. So Stop work order on Forest View, I'll probably have Craig chime in as well. But we did issue a stop work order based off of an incident of loading, unloading. In talking with the contractors who, the primary contractors who've been working on the project have actually been doing a really good job. They've had somebody typically on site. If they see somebody over, they're the ones who put up the no loading or unloading signs. They're the ones who, they'll go out there and chase people and say, hey, get off the road, you know, come unload on the site. But unfortunately what happened is, I don't know, lost track of time, I'd say about 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, whenever the incident first happened. Prior to the incident, basically what happened was, so they're finishing up with a lot of the site work. They've still got some more to go. They have some laterals to do and such, but they had a COVID exposure event. So their entire crew then had to go quarantine and get tested until they had the results from those tests. Well, since nobody was working, the folks who own the bulldozer called up and said, hey, can we do the winter maintenance on the bulldozer? And so they said, sure. And so the folks doing the maintenance sent a lowboy over to go pick up the bulldozer. Oh, I forgot one other thing that happened. What they were doing before the exposure event is they were redoing the road, that basically the entrance. The temporary culvert pipe they put in, Monroe County decided that was too small a pipe. They want a larger diameter pipe. So they tore up the whole entrance, which of course is where the no loading and unloading sign was. So they had to temporarily take that down, redo that entrance, put in a new culvert pipe, redo the entrance, bulldoze, you know, or pave it. And then they had the exposure event. So the new sign was still lying on the ground. So when the guy who came to pick up the bulldozer pulled up, he ignored the sign that was lying on the ground, pulled up in the road, you know, and got there a little bit early. And again, the bigger issue, being blunt, was that he was doing it in the road and school buses had to go around him. We understood the nature of, you know, Murphy's Law, essentially. It was a confluence of the three things. But because of the seriousness of it and because of some initial incidents that happened early on prior to, you know, these guys taking over the site, we decided that we were going to issue a stop work order. So we did that Friday. We basically told them to resume. They need to get us a letter. It will detail what I just told you. They told us that verbally, but I want them to put it in writing and sign to it. They also talked about what they're going to do to help mitigate that. So they're going to put additional stone around the entrance so that they can essentially pull off the shoulder if they don't want to pull down the road, and some of them don't with the big heavy vehicles, that they essentially can pull off the road. There'll be a temporary apron, for lack of a better way to put it, so that they're not causing issues from a visibility standpoint on Ward Hill, as well as them making a general statement of, you know, a renewed commitment towards ensuring this doesn't happen again. So until we get that letter from them, they will not be able to resume, lift the stop work order. So we made it clear it's going through at least through Tuesday. And then, you know, again, to lift, we need that letter of commitment from them. So I don't know if anybody had any questions, but, you know, again, especially because the school buses were involved, we felt it was necessary to put a stop until they rectify the situation. Obviously, the other thing that has to happen, the no loading, unloading sign will be restored. And that was not a temporary sign. They actually drove it into the ground to make sure people couldn't just come along and tip it over if they wanted to ignore it. But unfortunately, like I said, because they happened to be redoing the entrance, it was gone. So any questions on that?
Yes. Seems that this developer and this project is a reoccurring problem. They have no regard for safety. Those buses that go there.
Based on what?
Those buses that have been there have been having problems with traffic the whole time. They're always backed up and going around stumping over there. It's just not safe. I don't believe that this slap on the hand until Tuesday is enough. I don't think this developer really gets it. There's no way, and I said this in the beginning, and I hope that we wouldn't have these problems, that you can babysit someone who doesn't have a regard for safety.
Rob, do you have actual evidence of this? Because when we get these complaints, we send people over.
You're being combative. I'm telling you how I feel. You don't have to answer me like that. You can just talk about this. It's a problem. The residents are calling in. They're calling me, they're emailing me, they're doing the same thing for you because there's constantly a problem there. It's not your problem, it's not your fault, but our town cannot babysit this project. And that's what we're trying to do, and it's not working.
But again, my issue is, I hear people saying that stuff, but when we ask for pictures, photos, anything, whenever we are there, and we do babysit, we do have an inspector who is there an awful lot of the time, and we're not seeing it. So I get it that people are telling you, but I can't act on hearsay.
Steve, there was a video sent in with the buses. That's evidence.
And we did, and we put a stop work order on it.
I understand, but you're saying, you're acting like there's nothing ever been presented. And
I
there
didn't
is.
say that. I said there were 4 incidences. There were 3 at the very beginning, and there was 1 recently.
I'll tell you this, that basically, this is a slap on the hand to the builder, okay? We've already had an accident there before they even got this project going that has to do with this builder, okay? Apparently or allegedly, there's a truck backing out and they got into an accident. It's a problem. We need to be a little bit more stringent on this developer right now. That's my opinion.
Okay.
You mentioned 3 incidents in the beginning. What were they?
In terms of loading, unloading in the road before they had built they were either they weren't always on Ward Hill. There was also where they were on, what's the Long Ridge? Long Branch.
So there's been repeated issues specifically with loading and unloading in the road?
Again, there was at the very beginning. We worked with them. They put up the sign, they put in the field entrance, they put a lot of stuff in. This particular not the developer, the contractor had somebody on site every day making sure. And since then, we've not seen a recurrence until this most recent incident. Again, I have heard people make statements, but we can't ever get any specifics on it.
So one of the things that you're doing that's happening to mitigate this is the developer is putting in a gravel apron in order to pull off of the road to assist with the loading and unloading?
For these most vehicles have been pulling off. For some of the larger ones, they said that they seem to have a reticence to go down that road. So what they're going to do is they're going to build an apron, spread the stone out. Craig, I don't know if you have any more details on what exactly they're doing, but yep.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Deputy Town Supervisor Craig Eckert, sorry, Becky. Millie, and in addition to that, the road's paved now. So they have a binder up so that they can build houses, part of that requirement through Kevin. What they're doing is building a wider entrance for the stone so that the equipment can pull in. There was that also mixed between the COVID exposure and the fact that the road was paved, which is probably why the driver, even though he didn't accept the instructions from the boss that I get to talk to every day, gave him instructions not to pull off to the side of the road, did it anyway because he saw fresh pavement or fresher. It's been a month, but it still seems like it's new to him. He didn't want to pull down and damage the pavement. So there was that issue there.
All right, so the instructions to the developer now is that all of the vehicles need to pull off of Ward Hill.
It always has
their
been.
own construction road?
Right,
Yes,
it
that
has
has
been,
been
to
from
be
day
clear,
one.
this vehicle that didn't pull off wasn't the developer's
Yeah.
It wasn't even the primary contractors. Now, with that said, ultimately, he's responsible, which is why we put
He
a
was
stop
here.
work order on him.
And he was here in the meeting and he apologized. He understood the gravity right from the get-go. It was in our meeting minutes. We discussed it with him right off the bat that it would not be tolerated.
And are there any, so Rob, it sounds like you've had some information from the residents over there that I haven't heard about.
Well,
Were there concerns also about them, the construction vehicles during busing times?
well, yeah, the video that was shared with the town, and maybe you haven't seen it.
I don't think I have.
The trucks were in the road and the buses were behind it. They couldn't get to do what they wanted to do with
Yeah, that they need to
personnel
do,
that are picking up
right.
the kids and dropping them off. And this has been an ongoing problem. First, they're working too early sometimes, and the residents complain. And you know, Craig, I know you've talked to the builder. Steve, I know you've talked to the builder. I'm not blaming you guys for it. I'm telling you, you only can do so much. However, it doesn't seem like anything is resonating with this guy as to how he should be doing his job. There should be someone there when contractors come with those trucks directing them what to do, COVID or not. It's been an ongoing problem. So we can keep pushing this down the road, but it seems like it's gonna keep happening.
But you say it's an ongoing problem. It's not been. That's what I'm saying. I've not seen evidence that it is an ongoing problem.
Steve, I'm gonna say this. There isn't any evidence that's gonna ever stop this guy from doing this project.
So if I may, Mr.
Sure there
Barley.
is. If we have evidence, we'll put stop orders on them.
So.
Can I ask?
Let me, yes, please, let me, if I can, I'd like to answer Mr. Barley if I can. I have responded to probably over 50 calls and have been out there myself responding to those calls. Every time I do get a call, I go out. Weekends, evenings, it doesn't matter. One day I got a call, I was up on my roof putting my siding on, I hopped down, I hopped over there. I'm 2 minutes from the job site. It's not a far deal. I have stood up there on many other occasions. If I have heard other issues of them starting early, I have sat there to the point where I feel like I'm invading other people's privacy because I sit there in my private vehicle so that I can sit just off Long Branch and Branch Brook and sit there at 6:30, 6:45, and I've done that for almost 2 weeks straight when I've heard that they're starting early. I have no other documentation or proof of that. I call, it's a viable complaint. I go out, I try to validate it, and I have not been able to. So I have been out at least 50 times on my own and have not been able to validate anything else. This video that came in was phenomenal. It was great. I wish if I had more documented proof of this, we would move further. That's the reason. Every time I do get a call, and if you have people calling you, please have them call me. My cell phone is for that reason. And I will go out there. And if I don't document start early time in one day, I'll go out the next day and I'll go out the next day and I'll try to catch just that. I have a very good relationship with LG Evans, the contractor that's there. If they are getting pushed or asked to do something that they're not supposed to do, he will tell me. And then I will be able to go out on my own, separate. I know this is a taped meeting, but I don't think Ron Henkel's watching. But I have a much better relationship with them than he does. So they will tell me that they are working outside that realm because they want a better relationship with me than they do with him. And he said that in the meeting as well.
Right.
So if you have more other comments or concerns, I would be glad to go out and continue to look at that.
I know there's a lot of people who are against this developer, and I get it. He has a lot of issues. But in terms of this particular development, with the contractor he hired, they've been following the rules. And again, when they didn't just now, so again, before they came on board, in the very early days, there were issues. Once this contractor came on board, those issues have been cleared up. And we had an incident because of COVID, like I said, a confluence of three things, and I get it. But because of the nature of this situation, we couldn't let them off without a stop work order. He's facing financial hardship because of this stop work order. So it's a little bit more than a slap on the wrist. And in this time of COVID and with all the delays that were caused by the lawsuit, he's hurting.
He won't stick houses. He can't build houses now. The stop work order is stopping him from building houses. That's his income. That's the only thing he has.
Well, forgive me, Mr. Supervisor, if I don't feel apologetic for this guy
I'm not
not
asking.
doing his job as other builders do in our town. He should be doing his job the correct way. That's why we're talking about this.
And he is.
Did
is
our
what I'm
lawyer come
telling
in and
you.
talk to us about this? Have you weighed in on this?
On the stop work order?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So this letter that he's putting together, what's it supposed to do? What's it gonna say? Can you explain that to me?
I did.
I thought we shared the letter.
I told you exactly what it was going to say. Has it come in yet?
Oh, no, I thought the letter, yeah, from the developer did, but I didn't read it. I didn't see if you were not copied.
I may not
I
have been
did see
copied
an
on it.
email from Michael Hill.
Yeah, send that to me. I haven't seen it
Okay,
yet.
so no, I apologize. I thought that you were automatically copied in on that between my in and out.
So is this like a what if you don't do this, then we're gonna totally shut you down this letter? What is he agreeing to?
So again, he is agreeing, obviously, to restore the sign, to put in the additional stone, to make sure there is somebody on site, to again, continue to keep the vehicles off the road. They have been most of the time. Before this contractor came on, there were problems. There were 3 incidents that we had documented. Since that time, we've gotten calls, but as Craig has said, he shoots out there and there is none of that going on. And when there's the early morning starts, he will go in, he'll hang out there before coming into the work here. He'll hang out till 7 o'clock, no early starts. So as he said, he did that for what, 2 weeks straight?
Multiple times.
And there was no early starts. So we're getting complaints. Nobody has, other than this most recent incident, nobody has documented when they make those complaints. You know, again, those first early 3 incidents, people did. They took photographs and, you know, we had some actual documentation of the incidents. The more recent, you know, we hear general complaints, people saying he's always a problem. Well, he may have always been a problem, and he himself may be a problem, but his contractor is following the rules. So I keep, you know, like I said, I get where you're coming from, and you're responding to what the residents are telling you, but we can't, and they could even be right. They could be somehow just always be sneaking in when Craig isn't there somehow. But the point is, for us to act on it, and especially to cause financial harm to someone, we better be doing it on evidence and not just on people saying he's a problem.
So are we documenting all of these complaints? Because that seems like a significant number of visits and complaints. And can we have a record of that for the board?
I'm documenting the documented complaints, the ones that I can prove. I am not documenting every single occurrence when I go out, unfortunately. He is not the only one out of the 60 projects in town that have similar issues.
Yeah, that's one of the other statements that, by the way, you have slightly off, is that I don't think we have any developer who doesn't have these kinds of incidents.
We have a couple, but they're
Right. They're
a couple
far and
of-
few between.
Rinaldi, you know, Genesee Construction, those are the A++ people that I don't even have to babysit at all. The other larger group, the majority, is a group that I have to babysit.
Right.
For different reasons. There are contractors that just don't like to do some parts of some things, ones that I have shut down, another one that I threatened to shut down again this morning for the same issues. So I have issues with different contractors of what they like to do and how much they're going to push the envelope to get away with what they can until they're told to do the other way.
So are these complaints coming in by email, by phone? How are
Both.
these-
I get text messages, phone calls from residents because I will hand out my card to residents. Sometimes they come in right from our inspectors that are on site. Sometimes my inspectors will drive by and see things. That's what we've seen with another project that's shut down now over on Commerce Drive that just happened to run into something. You know, construction that wasn't even permitted. You know, we have a lot of that going on a very rare occasion. It is my full-time job. So that documentation of every occurrence, I do not do. I don't think I have the time for that. But if it's an issue when I go out and I see something and I can document it, then I absolutely memo it.
He
send it.
documents all violations, definitely.
What time is the start time there? 7?
7.
7, okay.
So
What time
just to
do
be
the,
clear, you can start before 7. You
It's
can't make
construction.
noises.
Right.
So in other words, you could get there so for instance, once houses are up, you could drywall all night long.
Right.
You can't be outside running a circular saw and generating noises, but the prohibition is not against construction. The prohibition is
Just a
against
noise.
construction noises.
noise construction?
Right.
And in my pre-con meetings, especially around a residential subdivision like that, I tell them, don't even start the equipment. Don't
Right.
start it, don't warm it up. And the last thing you want to do is back it up. You get the beeping alarm and
Right.
et cetera. They can have the pickup trucks, they can have little generators going on for their heat, for their job trailers and, et cetera. That's something we can do to stop them from that, so to speak. That kind of noise isn't anything different than residential noise.
But it's the big construction vehicles, and as Craig said, especially the backing up, or the worst is when they do the dump truck and the tailgate swings and slams.
Now, over on Wiregrass Park and over on East River Road, that may happen all the time. You just never will get a complaint.
Right.
What time do those people come on site to make sure that nobody's working? You mentioned some people are on site.
Every time I've been there, people have been there between 6:30 and 6:45. The pickup trucks or cars are on site. They're chit-chatting what they're going to do for the day. That's what I see from across the street.
No, I thought
Yeah,
Steve mentioned.
That includes, what was the name of the gentleman from the contractor
LG Evans?
who was sitting over on the right-hand side?
I don't remember the younger kid.
Yeah, he's basically the site. He's always on site.
Michael Hill is my contact. He was the one
Right.
on the left.
But I was just curious, what time those guys showed up to make sure no work is being done.
6:30, 6:45 every day, somebody's on
So if
site.
they're supposed to start at 7 and somebody showed up at 6 o'clock and started working, that person's not there to tell them to stop.
Correct.
That's okay.
Yeah, but there isn't anybody else from LG Evans that would be there.
Right, so I don't know who it would be working. Someone's not going to work on that
Yeah,
site for
there aren't
free.
any other subs at this situation. Right now, they only have one foundation and they're waiting for their subdivision plan to do anything else. LG Evans has done all the other work. It's only one contractor.
It's only
out there.
one company now.
It's only one company out there. They're finishing their utilities. They should be done in 2 weeks. That contractor would be off-site. We will have possibly a confluence of these issues. I'm not going to deny that now that this GC, so to speak, will be off-site, they won't be managing this site anymore.
Yeah, he's going to need to find someone as responsible as this one to manage
It is,
this.
it is in my to-do list that as soon as that occurs and that switch happens, I'll be out there already to help, preeminate any issues.
The reality on this is that you already had a problem before the project even started. People commenced a lawsuit against this project. He didn't even get to work. The lawsuit started before the project started. So you have people that don't want it. And when you have a whole neighborhood observing a project and watching it and nitpicking everything, and I'm not saying it needs to be nitpicked, maybe it doesn't, maybe everything's extremely obvious, you're going to get calls. If this were being developed in another part of town or in another area where no one could see what was happening, there may be a billion violations, you would never know it. Now you have people who are constantly watching it and constantly calling, and you have a very active code enforcement officer that's over there telling you, I've been over there 50 times and I haven't seen anything wrong. So, I think you have to put this into context. You have a community, or at least some residents that don't want it, that sued and lost, who are just watching for every little thing. And like I said, there have been definitely some things, and I think the town is handling it properly with the stop work order. And we talked about this before this project went through, that you don't get to approve the developers. You only get to deal with the projects they propose to you, which puts you in a precarious position at times. But that's the law. And I think you have a pretty active code enforcement officer. There have been times where in other situations where, I think he may have been a little bit too active, but I think the town is doing a good job here, doing what it can do. You're in a tough spot. You have two positions that just don't mesh.
Yes.
And that's just the spot you're in.
I think to Councilmember Barley's point that, everyone in the town is doing a fantastic job, but it's really difficult when the community feels like the developer needs to be babysat in order for there to be no no violations of their, of what is required. And, the residents within the town, I'm sure feel a certain responsibility to advocate for their specific neighborhood and to make sure that their neighborhood is as safe as possible. This is the first, I think, that I'm hearing that there were, this many visits, and this body of concern from the residents in that particular area. And I guess it just does concern me that, where there's this much smoke, is there any fire? And is there anything else that we can do to make sure that to put the residents' mind at ease, or at least begin documenting some of these concerns? Are we getting 10 phone calls all regarding, all on the same day regarding the same incident? Or what is it? What is the flow that's coming in? Is there a different process that we can set up so that we can track that kind of flow? And I get it, Craig. You can't keep track of every single text and phone call and all that sort of thing. But is there something that we can do in order to be able to keep track of that?
So let me compare and contrast this to another project that was also unpopular and that also has neighbors watching. Okay, Lehigh Park Apartments. Almost every single time we've received a call on that one, we go there and there's a violation and they've been shut down because of it, right? That's in contrast. We get a higher volume of calls here and we don't find violations when we go there. So, when you say that he's had to go out there, he hasn't really had to go out there. He's doing it, again, out of respect for the calls from the residents, right? And so when you say he had to go out there, that makes it sound like there was a violation and he had to go out there. No, there was a report of a violation. And again, I don't know where they're stemming from in terms of, is it possible, again, that just so he's there for 2 weeks and the one time he's not there, well, again, that they watch and look for his truck and they only commit violations when his truck isn't there. I don't know. It just seems awfully coincidental that we get these calls. He's there. There's no starting early. There's none of the in the roads, that type of stuff. Again, except for this video, this was a real incident. And upon finding that real incident, we did shut them down. So a couple of things on that too. You are, in terms of the types of actions you can take, in other words, again, the goal is to be corrective actions. It's not to be punitive. If you make it just punitive, we'll probably end up in court.
Well, if you want to make it punitive, you go to court. That's
Right.
what you do. You can go to court if you want. The problem is the code enforcement officer is saying right now on the record that he's been out there 50 times and hasn't found anything. So in my opinion, as a town attorney, I feel like the town is doing an excellent job. It's going out there, it's monitoring, it's not finding any violations. Some code enforcement officers, after that many non-findings, would probably stop responding, right? So, in my opinion, you're doing your job. You're going out there, you're monitoring. The one violation you do have evidence for that you did observe, you stopped them with a stop work order. Hopefully that is a message to the developer that if we do, you are being watched, he must know it. He must know that he's being watched.
He does.
That if you make any mistakes, now you're going to start losing days. And that's big time. That's a problem for him.
In addition to my on-site visits, if I get a call during the day, I will call the town inspector. or we have actually a second inspector that just does SWIP inspections. If the town inspector is on site and I'm able to communicate, hey, I got a complaint from over here on Forest View again. He says, and a couple of times he's been able to respond, I'm standing right here. What's the complaint? Well, I've got this, this, and this. And he says, I'm standing right here. I didn't see that. You know, when they were putting the water main in across the road or something that came into a question, it was that when there was a SWIP, when the SWIP inspector was on site, he was able to respond back, I'm here, I'll go see, but I didn't see it. I'll go talk to the contractor. When in addition to Millie, with the inspections, when I go out there, if it's during the day, during my hours, I charge them. So it's not just something that the taxpayers are also paying for. I will charge the contractor for that. I have the ability to bill my time to contractors, and I do that for these kind of situations. If I go up there in the morning, I'm not usually clocked in yet. I will go up there on my way into work. If I'm not clocked in, I don't charge them. I don't think that's even legal. So that I make sure that I just come in when I do and I clock in, and that's unfortunately free. But that's my time. It's not even towards the town's time. So if I have issues, the meeting, I will charge time to that meeting. I will charge the contractor, the developer for that. It gets put into their site inspection services and they get charged accordingly. Just like our town inspector is out there, they get charged when I'm out there.
And the other thing I'll note is that there does appear to be some boy who cried wolf stuff here, but you know, to Craig's credit, as Don pointed out, he hasn't kept that from when we get complaints. The problem is we don't know which ones are people crying wolf and which ones are real complaints.
The Millers have my cell phone. I have chatted with Mr. Miller on many occasions on noise and other issues. And he's been in communication, he's been in contact with that communication I've had via email. Mr. Cornair, again, recently asking again, and I've responded back to him on how many times I've been on site. And not only our town inspector, but the SWIP inspector and everybody else. In 50 days, we have 70 visits to the site. So I was able to document and show him the reports that are written, or the documentations or the construction inspection reports that are done, and define to them how much we are there. And construction wise, we're there a lot right now because there's a lot of pipe going in the ground. I'm not there every day. That is a town inspector who is there every day to watch that go in. So it's not so much just the babysitting. He's already there watching that stuff as he's supposed to, so that we can take dedication of that infrastructure.
Right. Yeah, a lot of the stuff when you're doing infrastructure like that, roads, sewer, water main, stuff like that, the town has to be there to inspect it to make sure it's being done properly because, as Craig said, ultimately it's going to be dedicated to us and we're responsible for its upkeep. So we want to make sure it's put in properly.
So, and it's not just when I'm there, they're trying to get away with things when I'm not there. If I'm not there, there's one or possibly two other people that can be there as well. And they know that everybody's watching. And I have received plenty of pictures and text messages of complaints, but the picture doesn't have either a timestamp. It doesn't have the ability to prove what and where and how. It's a quick picture of a vehicle that's on the road. Well, it didn't tell me that he was there for 5 minutes or just stopped and backed in, or, you know, the confluence. And by the time I get up there, it's off the road. It's not a 5-minute drive. So I don't doubt that there are other smaller occurrences that have occurred, that have gone on. I just haven't been able to catch them and therefore document them legally.
But I will note that, for instance, our town workers, right, we occasionally get a complaint. Oh, I got a whole bunch of, you know, town workers are just sitting in their car. They're doing nothing. Yeah, they're on their half-hour, you know, break. That's part of their workday, right? And rather than drive somewhere else, a lot of them will eat right in their vehicle, especially with COVID going on. So, I mean, these types of complaints, people think that there's stuff going on. It's not always true. It's not always something improper, right? If someone's pulling up, you know, to Craig's point, right? They're looking, they pull up, they pull over, they ask directions, where do you want me to pull in? Well, if someone looks out at that point, they see a vehicle stop there, they take that picture. Look, there's a vehicle stopped in the road. Well, sure. But then they pulled off and unloaded where they were supposed to pull off. And that's to Craig's point. He gets that picture. He immediately goes out there and finds that that's what it was. They were just stopped there. The vehicle's gone. You know, so like I said, I'm not saying people are making it up. I'm saying people are watching this like a hawk. And sometimes there can be some overzealousness.
Are-
The problem is it's hard for us to discern which ones are which, so we take them all seriously. And we've gone, and again, when we did find this incident, that was clearly an incident, we issued a stop work order. Mike?
Are the residents aware that the 7 o'clock start time is actually a noise time and it's not a start time? Because and I'll give you, I look out my back window and there's 12 guys standing around a foundation looking at stuff and checking it out. Hey, they're over there working, which they probably should be, but they might not be making any noise. So could that?
It's possible
Very
that's,
possible.
I do, whenever someone complains about the 7 o'clock, I make it clear to them, it's the noise.
Okay.
So,
So you've made it clear.
Yes.
Okay.
And I
You've
have
made-
communicated that with many people on site
Okay.
too.
I just was-
And with residents, I've communicated with
but
one-on-one.
you're probably right that that's the source of some of it.
Right.
Is
I mean-
a lack of understanding of the code.
And part of the problem with the noise is that noise is subjective, you know, what is appropriate noise? And that's one of the things with
Car
noise
doors
ordinances.
opening and closing,
Yeah.
some people will say that's construction noise.
Right.
Well, when you get in your car in your driveway, you're making that same amount of noise. So,
And the
you know.
Millers had a very viable complaint all summer. They're right out their back window where they were trying to, school in a hybrid situation is heavy construction equipment going on 5 to 6 days a week, consistently going on. And they had to try to operate and teach their kids with that noise. That was a very viable situation, but unfortunately it's not against the code.
right.
And you mentioned, when did this project start? I mean, you say you've had some complaints in the beginning and then this complaint. I mean, when
I
did it
forget the
actually-
meeting minutes were on that email that I sent out. I came in on Monday and followed up with all the with the meeting minutes where I documented that and then the other occurrences that occur that we.
But it was sometime this past summer, wasn't it?
They were delayed from their start because of COVID through their public hearing, right? So was it, I'm going to guess August. I think it
Yeah,
was
I
the
think-
end of August.
That
Okay,
sounds,
so since
If I got to
since
throw a
late
dart in the
August,
wall.
if-
again, at the very beginning, there were some complaints. Once the LG Evans,
Mhm.
once LG Evans came on the site, that stuff was cleaned up.
But that contractor, once he's done, he's.
Right, but
he's-
that's also the heavy machinery, the majority of it. The next phase will be
Houses.
the house construction, the individual houses. So the grading, the utilities,
Heavy excavation.
paving,
works.
all that stuff will be done.
It will turn to framing nailers, roofing guns. That's the noise that will start to probably get complaints on.
Right.
Those are the people that will try to advance quickly, get things done, be out there early, working under lights or working in the evening. Trying to get
So
things.
to Craig's point, as soon as they have the house framer company selected, he's going to meet with them to make it very clear that if you violate this, you're going to get a stop work order. And you guys aren't going to get paid while you're sitting still. No contractor wants that to happen. That's why, to Craig's point, the contractor is generally better behaved in a lot of these situations than the developer, because the contractor doesn't get paid unless the work gets done. And oh, by the way, they've got to keep their employees. So they don't want their employees off for a week, not working, generating revenue.
I'll just say it was very alarming to me to see 2 school buses passing on double yellow line at 6 a.m. on that road, so that was.
We absolutely utterly
I
agree on
see
that
it.
point.
Which is why we said, even though we understand the circumstances behind this, we can't let you off for it because it was too serious a violation.
That's why it became an immediate shutdown.
Right.
I tell you.
So can I ask, what day was it shut down?
Friday afternoon, right when we met with them on Friday afternoon.
And is there a standard for shutdown? I mean, how do we come to this situation, the decision that we're going to shut them down until Tuesday?
A shutdown occurs, again, following legal code, and unfortunately, Don, this would be a good question for him. A stop work order is to preempt a corrective measure. And again, it's never meant to be punitive. After a request to adhere to the rules is not followed, the stop work order occurs until that rule can be followed. So technically, Friday would have been it. I mean, he was ready to apologize at that point. He told us what occurred, why it occurred. He messed up and it wasn't going to happen again. That technically is a corrective action. How far we can push that out as far as punitive for these next 2 or 3 days, that's a good question. Whenever I've shut down a company, shut down another project in town, which is common, you have a stop work order. You didn't do this in the time frame you're supposed to do it. As soon as you complete it, the stop work order is off. That's always how the corrective action gets worded in my
Right.
stop work orders.
And sometimes it's stuff like, for instance, if it's a stormwater issue, if the DEC has to come in, it might extend a little bit longer because the DEC might have to come in and inspect the damages.
As in the case was Lehigh.
Right, that could delay the restart time. In this case, there's nothing like that, but like I said, we wanted the few extra days because, so a couple things, like I said, they had to take the corrective measures. And then we also wanted a couple extra days to make sure that they understood the seriousness of that violation. To Don's point, if you want to take more corrective actions, then you can talk about the town taking them to court.
I guess my question is, does the board have any say-so or any vote on how long his suspension should be?
In court.
His work stop it should be?
In court.
So what you guys have come up with on Tuesday, that's it? That's what you're telling me?
What the supervisor discussed on Friday is what I'm following, is the
Right.
course of action that I'm following.
Yep.
Is it possible to send that video? Millie said she hasn't seen it. I haven't seen it. Mike, it sounds like you've seen it.
Yes, I've seen it.
I
Is it
apologize.
possible to
Yes,
send it to us so that at least we know what you're looking at? I mean, I didn't get the
Sure.
video. Millie didn't get the video.
I apologize. I believe I got it from either
It was-
Mr. Barley or
It was
from,
from Rob.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, if you could forward it to us, just so we know exactly what you're talking about, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, and we did not, I mean, you're saying 6 AM for the bus, and that's great. I don't know if we were confirming. I know it was, we can pretty much guess it was before 7 because of the time frame of where the sun was, but we didn't check the GPS of the bus to find out what time it was. I don't have any reason to deny that hasn't been proven, I guess is my point to that. We didn't document that it was before 7. It is.
I could look at the metadata if we really want to take a look
So
at
that's
that.
what Steve made the comment to as well. You know, that was, again, the comment from the person that took the video.
Right.
I
I'm
need,
sure he knows what time the bus comes to pick his kid up.
Right.
You
right,
know, it
and
might
we
have
can
been-
confirm that. So the documentation becomes the proof that that was there at that time frame.
It's- you know, you
But the point being
Right.
that regardless of the time, the bigger issue was the safety violation.
And I am absolutely in agreement with that. I was deposed from that accident under my own request with Don, because I was one of the first ones actually out there after that accident. Unfortunately, it came through as mud on the road and not as that accident. I wasn't out there till a couple hours after. But once I saw what I saw out there, I asked Don to meet with that lawyer and be deposed. So I was there. And Mr. Barley, I'm with you. When Peter was in his seat and I was the deputy director and I had to fight with Ron Henkel on Trailview, I went to him all the time saying, if there's any way we can stop a developer from going, this is the guy that I want to stop. There isn't. We tried avenues. There just isn't any other way to do it besides to get him to adhere. These are the corrective actions that we unfortunately have to continue to do. And honestly, he's been better than the other contractors in site. In town. I have bigger issues with other developers at the moment.
Well, Tuesday to me seems like a very short period of time.
So again, if you want to go punitive, it has to go to court.
You know, so this is the standard, is what you're telling me? 2 or 3 days or a day, or as long as they come in and say they're sorry, that's it.
We're creating that standard, I think, to be quite honest.
We need
with
to
you.
create something because.
Well, and we are, again,
Really-
it hadn't been done in the past much,
I
right?
understand.
And so, like I said, we essentially put a 5-day stop on him. And he, you know, they understand they have to, again, take those other corrective measures. And then they can resume. You know, one of the things we, of course, got a couple complaints that there were people out there, well, because they still have to do their SWIP inspections, They still were doing Monroe County had scheduled the water inspection, so they were still out there doing inspections, but they weren't doing construction.
Yeah, they had to test their water sample.
Right. So,
Pickup trucks were still there.
right.
I believe the water authority was on site.
So, but again, if you want to try to get punitive, then to answer your question, as a town board, you can put forth a resolution calling for an appropriation of funds, and you'll have to argue with Linda as to where they come from. I don't know if we have a legal fund to start a legal action against them.
We don't, we should. Just in general, to have, I'm not referring to this one, but just in general, we should, I hope there's some kind of fund. So yes, we do have money to go after people.
I guess my thought goes to be clear, they're going to be able to work on Tuesday morning. They're not starting Wednesday, they're starting Tuesday morning, which is tomorrow.
No, it wouldn't be till Tuesday afternoon. It would be
And if we have, it still has to be agreement on that letter, which he hasn't seen yet.
right. But the earliest it would be essentially whatever that number of hours is from when we issued the stop work order.
Sorry, I couldn't find that video.
Oh, okay.
I have it somewhere. I'll find it for you and send
I'll
it.
forward.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's
I've got a
my
copy that
phone's-
Rob sent to me too. But
we need to express to the builder that, I heard Don say it, I've heard you say it, this builder knew that these people were gonna be watching him, and you guys told him these people were gonna be watching, so dot the i's and cross the t's. But here we are right here again. I'm not looking to go to court at this point, but we need to make sure he knows that, actually, I would like it if he couldn't work until Friday. I don't think I have to go to court for that, do I?
he could sue us.
But what happens if it happens again? That's really
Then
what
we
I'm
have to do
after.
the same
What
thing.
happens if he violates another safety issue in our community?
Then we issue a stop work order.
Again,
Right.
Yeah, for how long? For for a day or two? And I think that's
I get
Rob's
your
point.
frustration, but we are a nation of laws.
I understand that, but
and
I'm just saying that, what can we do as a board? What can we
I've
put
told
in
you, you
place
can take him
as
to
a
court.
board?
So one of the things that I think I would personally like to see is, can we have some sort of a standardized reporting form or something along those lines so that we can document what reports are coming in, when they're coming in, that sort of thing. It doesn't seem like it would be that difficult to put a link to a Google Forms or something along those lines on our website and just direct people there to say, I understand that there's probably a handful of people that won't be able to navigate through that kind of system, but I would think that the majority of people would be able to click on that and make a report, and then we would be able to keep record of, we had 20 people all saying the same exact thing on this particular day.
So my 2 cents on that is, yes, we're kind of doing that now, and I'm not familiar with the new work order process that the DPW is utilizing, but that is one way that everybody can call into the DPW and Joe or dispatch writes a work order based off of that issue. The only conflict which is a great way to document all of those phone calls. What, unfortunately, with what we're dealing with Ron in this project is I need to be out there right away to document that. So I ask them to call me specifically because I am 2 minutes away. And it is the same for every other project in town. When I do meet with the residents and they have an issue and I give them my business card with my cell phone on it, call, text me. If there's an issue, I'll be there. I have the quickest way to respond to that. I don't know if somebody calls DPW and Joe creates a work order in the afternoon, or if Joe's not there in the evening, I probably won't even get it till the next day.
So Craig, how about this? Anytime you go out, for now, send them to me. We'll set something up down the road. Just send a quick email saying, or text saying, I've gone out to the site.
Okay, great.
Whichever site it is, not just this one. any site. That, in other words, in response to a complaint I'm talking about.
I understand.
Right.
That's a lot.
I know, but
Okay.
I don't know how else to handle it because they want to know every time it goes out, and we'll figure something out that, in other words, I'll probably just copy and paste it into an email to the town board.
We are in a little bit, we're a little bit busier right now in this winter because of COVID, and COVID has pushed more construction into this winter. But during the summer, I can get 50 to 100 calls a day.
I just, I guess, like I said,
Wow.
Yes.
There's
That
a
I can
ton.
document.
Right, and it's all kinds of things, right? We just had an instance where a developer was, they're decommissioning a portion of a sewer. We were supposed to be present when they capped it to make sure it was capped properly. Of course, they didn't. They've now put a pavement over the top of it. Right? So, now with that said, if it collapses, so one of the things we looked at, we talked about what we should do in this regards and made sure that the plugs were good. Because if it collapses, it's their sinkhole. It doesn't affect us. The issue is if it collapses and the plugs aren't good, then we get infiltration into our sanitary sewer. But, going back to one of the things we've talked about with the codes, there is no way under the current codes to fine them for doing that. So again, this goes back to we've talked about, we've got to have some code reforms. Now, understand, any punitive fines like that will end up in court. So what will happen is we would send them a notice of violation. They would then be able to challenge it. They could either, essentially, it's like a parking ticket. You can either pay it or you can go to court and fight it. And that's basically what those would be like. And that's, if you look at most of our code where they have specific fines and specific instances, but like I said, that for a lot of these things, there isn't, and we would have to create those if you want to start, again, hitting them with punitive fines for when they violate these things.
No, I wouldn't, my question on that one that you just mentioned, and, obviously you guys do it every day, but somebody put something in, then paved over it before it was able to be inspected. That's what you're saying. Well, then guess what? It doesn't pass. You got to dig it up. I mean, I will tell you what, this is my theory, and maybe I'm wrong. If you made one guy dig it up, dig everything up to inspect it, it would probably be the last time a contractor did that in the town.
Probably not, but it would certainly make them think more. But I will tell you.
Could you do that?
You have to go to court.
If they're supposed to file, I mean, hey, you put this pipe in, then you get it inspected, then you fill it, and then you pave it. You got to go to court to tell them to, okay, then it doesn't pass inspection, and then what do they do? It doesn't pass inspection at that point because we never.
So the difference is you're
Inspected
thinking about it the other way. From an inspection for a new service, it gets cameraed. You can run a camera down it. You inspect it after it's been constructed. They understand if they've paved over it and there is an issue, they're going to have to dig it up. The issue is because you've plugged it, you can't get a camera in there. So I cannot fully inspect it. Now, what they're going to say is that they will immediately go to court. There will be a judge stop on us ordering, they won't have to dig it up. The court could rule that if it was potentially, in other words, if it was an honest mistake, the judge is going to say, go ahead. If the judge feels, and again, I'm presuming, I don't know exactly what a judge is going to say, but the thing that gets into it is the cost. Look how long, right? If you're familiar with Canisius Inn on Canisius Lake, right? They violated their building permit. They violated their agreement and how big they built that building. It was much larger and closer to the boundary lines and closer to the lake than everything they'd been approved for. What did it take? 10 years more to finally get a ruling? Do you know how much legal cost was involved in that? And the reason that it's there, you say, oh, it's simple, is because there's a financial right? They're now out all that money. Paving, the cost to rip that up, dig down, re-inspect it. If it finds out was nothing wrong, then they say, okay, town, you now are responsible. We're going to sue the town for that cost.
Well, I don't see how they could sue the town when it's not supposed to be paved until it's been inspected. It's their screw up. They should have had it done. They should have done it to begin with. So what would prevent somebody, and just ask me, what would prevent somebody from building a whole project? You give them all these rules, they never call you up to inspect anything. And okay, here's the house, it's all built.
They don't get a C of O.
Well, then you could do the same thing with, if the pipe isn't inspected, it's paved over.
Parking lots don't need a C of O.
Well, the building at the end that's hooked up to that pipe.
It's not hooked up. That's
Okay.
my point. In this case, it was a decommission.
abandonment.
If it was a new pipe, we'd have some ability.
Right.
Because again, you can't get a C of O.
So they
until
don't
you've
have to follow the
demonstrated-
rules. That's what we're saying. Even
No, they
if
do. There's, again, it has to do with how willing are we to expend taxpayer dollars to go after them? And we're not, we can do it. We're gonna have to hire more in terms of a town prosecutor. We're gonna have to, we can expend those monies, but it's probably going to be a negative spend. In other words, we're going to spend more money than we take back in fines because you're limited to what you can collect in fines. And, it's possible the judge would grant us our legal fees, but in these types of things, I've not seen that be the case. I can check around with other towns to see what other towns do in that regards. Again.
then I really don't know why I don't understand why any
Because then they don't get a building permit.
contractor would follow the rules. If I can put a pipe in and you're supposed to get it inspected before you cover it, why would I wait for somebody to come inspect it? I just cover it up and go ahead with my project. Why would I wait?
Because then you don't get a building permit. Again, in this particular instance, it's going the other way. It was being decommissioned.
They're going to own the problem.
Okay.
I just don't want to sign off on the fact that we were there and inspected it, and therefore their insurance company says, hey,
Right.
the town was there and they think everything's hunky-dory. I'm not going to tell them
Right.
that. I won't tell them that.
So we made it very clear and let them know we will not sign off on this because we were not there. So like Craig said, they might have to then, sometimes it's the insurance company. In fact, in a lot of stuff, like one of the interesting things, we actually have no authority to charge RIT for their building permits. Do you know why we get to charge them for the building permits? Because their insurance company will not insure a building that hasn't been inspected by a fire marshal and a building code inspector. So a lot of times we don't have the legal authority that you think we do.
So,
But again, with a lot of the stuff, the big hammer for all this is the C of O. Not everything has that hammer. And when they don't, that can be a problem, right? A C of O is not dependent on whether they do or don't unload and load in a loading zone. So we can't withhold their C of O because of that, right? If they didn't properly install a pipe, then that building is technically not necessarily safe until we can demonstrate that that building meets building codes. We can't give it a C of O. But if it's something that doesn't affect whether that building is or is not safe, then we can't withhold the C of O. And so like I said, I get where you're coming from. I get the frustration. Believe me, we have to live it, right? We do what we can. For the most part, the folks do play ball. There are some who, usually it's for expedience sake. They've got a contractor who's about to leave and they need to get it done and they call us up and, by the time we get there, they're already, halfway through the stuff. We will typically deal with that accordingly. Sometimes that means a stop work order. Sometimes if it's from an inspection standpoint, if it's something that's going to be a safety issue, we will make them tear it up. And so, you know, you say about we have made them dig stuff back up. It happened at Howlett Acres. There were some issues with some of the manhole sewer sanitary manholes. You know, we're looking at ways to improve the process. One of the things that's unfortunate with the way stuff gets done is the way they do it now is they send a camera down, they being the developer sends a camera through that videos the whole thing. Then they send that video footage to us and we review it. Well, meanwhile, they're still going with their jobs. We've talked to them about, instead of them paying some third-party crew to go video it, why not pay our sewer folks to video it, and they can be reviewing it and okaying it on the spot, so that if there is a problem, they catch it before you start to put all the stuff over the top of it. Because I'll tell you, once they put stuff over the top of it, then they want to take the easier way out of fixing it. And whereas it might be legal, it's not necessarily the best solution. And so, you know, the sooner we can catch this stuff, if they can correct it where it's not a huge additional cost to fix it, they will. If it means that they're going to have to spend 10 times the amount to fix it over another patch solution, I'll call it, they're going to argue that patch solution, and a lot of times they'll win because from a code standpoint, it's allowed, it's just not preferred, right? So, you know, again, a lot of the stuff you look at, it's not, there's this belief for a lot of people, you know, like there's someone who thinks, oh, we can tell the developer of the Delphi property that he can't build on that other parcel. We have no such right to do that. He has a right to develop his property within the zoning laws. There are bounds, things that we can meet. We've got seeker, we've got zoning laws, but if they meet all those, we can't stop them as much as the neighbors would like us to stop them, right? We've done a bunch of stuff. We've put in protections for historic properties. We just told that the folks who bought the Delphi building itself, they wanted to switch their address to Erie Station Road. We told them no. You think that one sounds like a trivial little thing. Well, why do you care if they change their address to Erie Station Road? Why? How do most people find stuff today? They plug it into their GPS, and it would send all those trucks through the historic intersection.
Yep.
And so we said, no, you can't do it. You've got to stay 5500 West Henrietta Road so that it sends them to that entrance there. So we're constantly looking out for these things. We're constantly taking care of those stuff. But again, there isn't as much ability as you might think for what we can do. That doesn't mean we don't push back. That doesn't mean sometimes we don't put a few toes over the line it's again in the town's interest, that potentially the developer could sue the town and say, you can't do this, you've overstepped your authority. It's a balancing act, you know.
So I just want to say that, first of all, I really appreciate the level of detail that you go into and look at when you're considering all of these different issues. And I absolutely appreciate your dedication, Craig, to going out to every single one of these different calls and all of that. I do think that there's, there probably is a technology solution that would make things a little bit easier in terms of handling all those calls. You know, if you're getting upwards of 100 calls, I think there's probably easier solutions to dealing with that than just getting them all yourself. But to get back to the Ward Hill issue, are you suggesting that we could take a look at some of the code issues and maybe develop a solution that would help us to address some of the...
So again, we could put in some stuff in there, and as you know, wanted to do an overhaul of the code. COVID kind of pushed some of that back. That's on the slate for this winter and spring. We've got a lot of sections, but one of the things we can put in there, you know, essentially like a parking ticket list, right? Park here, get by this, do this, you know, where you have essentially
Break it down a little
break
bit
it down
more.
by a parking fee, and that if they do this, we issue them a ticket. Now, again, they have the ability to go to court. So it could mean we'll be in court a lot more, or they could just pay it. You know, one of the things that is you see traffic, most authorities do with traffic tickets, they typically have a range. And if you pay your ticket up front without challenging in court, you're usually on the bottom end of that range. And if you go to court, the judge can issue the fine for anything in that range, right? And actually, he can also say you didn't violate it at all, right? But my point is, you know, why did they do it that way? Because they hope that people will just pay the ticket and not go to court.
And then make redress to the issue.
Right.
Because, I mean, at the bottom line is we don't want to ticket people. What we
Right.
want is we want to make sure that these are not issues.
I understand. So that we can do with a stop work order. That we already have that ability. And again, when we find them, we do those. The issue being, if you want a punitive measure, then punitive measures must go through court. People, it's the presumed innocent until proven guilty. We have to demonstrate in a court of law that they violated this in order to hit them with a punitive charge.
And having it in code so that they're informed ahead of time would help them help us to demonstrate that in court?
That is correct.
Okay.
And it also, you know, again, it gives us the ability to issue that ticket. If it's always, right now, essentially, it would be always an individual case where I would have to go and make the case, and we would have to say, this is how much when we write the violation, this is, you know, when you look at, so for instance, when you look at some of the other sections of code where we do some of the more ticket type oriented, that's right in the code as to what the charges are. And the only reason we can do them is because of that. You know, the thing with that is that any of those can be challenged at court. There have been a few that have, most of them do not. Usually what happens is if there are mitigating circumstances, they'll call me and I have some ability, there's boundaries of which I can do, of which I can listen to this situation. And especially for first-time offenders, we can essentially waive what I'll refer to as the punitive portion, and they just have to pay the town's out-of-pocket costs for grass mowing as an example of that. But again, they could, every time we issue one of those, it could end up in court. It's, you know, there's a bunch of those things, you know, again, when code enforcement hits any of these for property violations, they all end up in court. And again, there's a few property violations that have that ticket list, those ones, but if they don't, it goes to court. And then the judge, if you read the section of code, it will say a maximum fine of $1,000 and not more than 10 days in jail. The judge then listens to the case, makes a determination, assesses the fine, and any jail time if it's included. That's how that works. And that's how all the punitive stuff works. And so again, if you want to go after this guy from a punitive standpoint, we can, but it means going to court.
We don't have this situation documented prior. This is the first time we've gone through with this because of the situation that it's in. It's the first time we're walking through this type of situation. Again, any other stop work order that I put has a corrective action that may even get a week or two. Some have been a month before it gets corrected, but that is up to the contractor.
Right.
That's not, again, a punitive by me. I say, fix this. You can go do it in 1 day or 30 days. It's your call. And they,
You know, and again, if you're drawing the parallels to the moving vehicle thing, to use an example, right? Speeding, the instant I slow down, I've stopped speeding, right? There is no corrective measure, right? Busted taillight, I've got to go get my car worked on and get the taillight fixed, right? That's an instance where, you know, you've got a corrective measure that has to be taken. The issue, like I said, with this particular one is the instant that vehicle is no longer loading or unloading, they're technically in compliance, which is why we talked to them about, we wanted some additional work done to make it safer going forward. You know, and again, the written letter from them, and being perfectly blunt, we told them we would like to do some punitive, and they pushed back on it, and we explained why, and we won the argument.
We're also
If we
enforcing
tried to
a
go
county
beyond
road.
what we said, Rob, I think we would need to end up in court.
When you're talking punitive, you're talking money. Dollars.
No, well, in
It
this
hurts him in
case,
the pocketbook.
I'm
you're right,
sorry?
it's hurting his pocketbook because they're not working.
Right, because it's a stop order, so he can't get going.
Right, the point is, the issue was already corrected, and now we're saying you still have to not work. So yes, punitive means it,
It's hitting somehow.
money or jail time. But in this case, you know, again, it's taking money out of their pockets because they're not
Right.
able to work and move
Okay.
towards where what generates revenue is when they can sell that house.
We don't have, so when, in other instances where you're talking punitive, are you talking actual? So you're comparing it to getting a speeding ticket where you're going to have to pay money. Are you talking about potentially charging these people, okay, you didn't do this, so now you've got to, are you talking fines?
I'm saying if we want to create that, yes, it
Okay.
would be fines. You know, so again, what happens if people let their lawns go to hell and we have to come in and mow them, there is a charge. A portion of that is the out-of-pocket cost the town has to pay. A portion of that is punitive.
Right.
You know, again, they don't have to accept that punitive portion. They can go to court and fight that and not have to pay it.
I would just be curious that if we were talking about setting up fines, what's enough when you're looking at a project that's a couple $1 million? I mean, what's enough to make it a big deal to them? I mean, what's a big deal to me when I get a parking ticket or something like that? You know, what's a big deal to someone with $1 million project? You know, how do you hit them hard enough financially that it's a big deal that they won't do it? And I'm just curious as to.
Well, but then the other thing you run into is it's probably a misdemeanor offense, and so you can't go above a particular dollar threshold. That's why you look at almost all the code, it has the same threshold because that's the cap for a misdemeanor offense. It's not a felony. So I can only, there's a maximum fine and there's a maximum number of days. Now, you know, we had an incident where there was somebody who was not upkeeping their house for multiple years. This was going on. And they did bring them into court. And when they heard that they could spend 10 days in jail, they got their butt in gear, right? Now, the judge basically gave him a stay and, you know, said, well, what do I have to do to stay out of jail? And was like, finish it. I'll work to help keep it going, but you need to show steady progress. And as long as you're showing good, solid, steady progress. Now, the fact that the courts were partially shut down due to COVID also helped him, but he did get the work done. And I'll be honest, it was that potential spending 10 days in the clink. It's, you know, you hope it doesn't come down to that. Unfortunately, it occasionally does. And, you know, we've had a couple of those incidents. You know, we have certain houses in town, and most people know their addresses, that are problematic. And we hit these folks all the time, and they go to court and they get out of some of them, and they, you know, it's.
I'd like to throw this out there, and even though I know we're under recording here and this is open, I want to be clear that the town has imposed a limitation on this contractor due to the severity and the potential for an accident, but it's on a county road. We're kind of created a rule that we don't have in our code. I've created a rule, let me be blunt, I've created a rule against this contractor that is not in our code on a county road. I'm not even quite sure how enforceable that honestly is.
Right.
And we've done a stop work order on a county road over something that we don't have in our code that's really unenforceable. I am trying to balance our residents, this construction issue, and everything else going on. If Ron decides that he feels that this is punitive and takes us to court, without Don here, my guess is he wins.
Right. Because
Well, I think you know, I hear a lot, with all due respect to Craig and to Supervisor, I hear a lot of times here that we're always worried about someone suing us. But that really shouldn't be something that moves us to go one way or the other.
It's not a fear of suing.
I just want to finish and then you can
Okay.
answer. Because sometimes you have to do things because it's the right thing to do. I'm not saying that we need to do that right now, but it may come to that situation because of safety and because of issues that we have to do what we have to do to stop something because it's not for the good of our community. And I wouldn't not vote for that because we might get sued. Because we get sued for a lot of things. There's accessory things that we get sued for all the time.
You're misunderstanding the statement, Rob.
I don't think I misunderstood you, but
It's
go
not
ahead.
that we're afraid to be sued, right? We went after, look at the hill road there that was horrible. Stonefield, right? So we've gone after this stuff. The issue is you've got a balancing act because if you push it to the point where it goes to court, we're going to lose, and then you get no corrective measures, right? That's what we're saying. From a jurisdiction standpoint, it's arguable whether we have any jurisdiction on that county road. And yet we put a stop work order based on something he did on a county road where we have no jurisdiction. And it's through the discussion and negotiation with that developer, negotiation isn't the right word, but it's through that discussion and that riding that knife's edge that, you know, you want to be as severe enough as you can to make sure he understands the severity of the issue here without pushing him to the point where he goes to court and we lose and there's no stop work order.
Well, I think we're kind of saying the same thing, that there's a thin line, and I think it goes both ways.
I agree with you. I'm trying to push that as much as I can and try to communicate what we could be at risk for while I try to push that. Is that?
Craig, by no means do I mean, don't think this is, you know, it's against you. It's just frustrating. It's just frustrating when you get these phone calls. You know, when I saw that video, it really irked me because we talked about this developer prior to this. And so by no means, I mean, am I, you know, holding it against you.
No, I understand.
Right. And we
I
understand.
feel bad for you. You got to
Right.
get off your roof.
Right.
Which again is, like I said, why, even though they had the LG Evans had a really good reason, for lack of a better way to put it, as to why it happened. Because of the severity, we said we can't let you off, right? So we get all that and we understand all that, and that's why we did what we did. And again, I'm not afraid of being sued. I don't want to be stupid about it either, though.
No, I'm not saying that we
Right.
be stupid about it. I'm just saying, I do have our budget in mind all the time.
Right.
But there is a point where something has to be done. And when it comes to that point, I wouldn't let someone threatening me with a lawsuit or the thought of that stop me from doing that.
So to be clear, he never said those words,
Right.
anything even close to those words. I
Yeah,
just
I
understand.
was just being,
Right,
speaking
I
out, too.
understand, but I'm just saying, we also understand the legality and what we do and don't have authority over. And it's not as much as people think.
yeah, because people can sue for anything.
Well, that's absolutely true. Yeah, like I said, it's also though, they can sue for anything. So again, that's not the fear. The fear is giving them grounds to win a lawsuit. Right? And even that fear isn't the right term. Caution is a better term, right? I don't want to be doing something that is going to cost the taxpayers money if I can do it in a way that achieves the results I want without putting the taxpayers' money at risk. That's what I'm trying to do. And so again, that's why we hit these guys. They're, you know, it's, and we're going to stay on top of it as we have been. Again, I know we've gotten a number of complaints, but very few of them have actually panned out into actual violations.
Well, you know, judging, you know, from what's all been said here and how really, you know, if I've talked to any developers, they just love being in Henrietta, right, Michael? They love being here because we're so easy. We're going to have to get a little tougher on some of the developers if they're violators, as you've done right now in stop and order and stuff like that. And I think we need to put some other things.
To be clear, that's not why they love it. It's not because we're
No.
easy or lax
Because
on the
I
stuff.
know, because we help them and we
help-
get the
no.
business
No,
done. and-
no, they love it because of our taxes. I've talked to a couple
Right.
different developers here and they think that we're tough
The-
compared to other towns.
The thing that they do like
None of the
from,
developers
no,
tell me
Rob,
that.
Rob, let me finish. The thing they do like in the process is that we don't have a whole bunch of garbage.
You don't have to jump through a lot of hoops.
Correct.
No, well, it's not that they don't have, there's no moving targets. Chris has a packet that we hand to them and say, here's all the stuff you have to do. There's a lot of stuff they have to do, but we make it very clear, right? And we say, oh, well, if you're going to get started on this, then, you know, boy, that's going to be a type 1 action. So get us a letter of intent now. If you want to be in on by this date, you need to give us a letter of intent now so we can start the 30-day clock for seeker, right? If you don't say that, if you don't give them that heads up, then what happens? The date comes and goes and it pushes them out a month, right? So, you know, it's not that we let people off easy. It's that we work with them in a partnership to make sure the stuff goes correctly and goes properly. And, you know, again, I'm going to use Chick-fil-A as an example, right? Look at the one in Greece. To me, that was a failing of their planning board and or town board. I don't know what their special use permit requirements are, but look at how this one went off, right?
True.
And when they came in, we laid everything out. We told them exactly what was needed, right? Right from the get-go, we said, you need to get that left turn signal in. So they knew right up front what they had to get done, and they had to work with the state DOT to get that done. We
And I'd
made it
like-
very clear as it was getting close that you're not going to get a C of O until that thing is operational, right? We made clear that you're not going to get a C of O until we have all the stuff that we outlined on that special permit. They all have to be done. So what they love about us is that right up front, we tell you, here is what you need, and you don't have to jump through all the hoops and BS that some towns put developers through. That's the part of the process they like. It's not that we're easier or harder on them in terms of regulations. We are strict in terms of inspections and stuff like that. But the thing is, it's the knowing what's coming in, right? The thing that developers hate is at the last minute, a sudden big change, and now they have to shuffle. If they know something's coming, they can plan for it. If it suddenly appears, then their schedule's all messed up. That's what they love about this town. The fact that, you know, Amazon, for instance, when they came in and did that warehouse in Clay Road, it was something like 40 days from beginning to end from an approval standpoint, right? And we stayed on top of them. We required them to get Monroe County sheriffs when they were having trouble with the Uber drivers, and we've required them to expand their parking lots and to build additional off-site streets because they had all these problems that came up after the fact, that as Amazon changed the way they did that. But again, there aren't many towns that could get through the entire approval process in 40 days. They just, this town is very well run in that regards, that when someone comes in, they get told exactly what they have to do in order to get approval. And so that's the part they love. It's not that we're more lax. It's that we don't have all the nonsense that a lot of towns put in front of them.
I think you misunderstood what I said. I didn't say we were more lax. I said that, but when we find someone that is violating, we need to be tougher on them.
That I agree
All
with.
the other stuff I agree with.
You were saying that they love us because, again,
And
that's why they love
if I
us.
interject you real quick, you're both right. I mean, you're going to find a lot of contractors that we are easy on, but because they do the right thing right off the bat. I don't babysit them. I don't need to. My inspectors don't
Easy isn't the
babysit.
right
I wish I
term.
had.
Well, yeah,
more
you're
of those.
probably correct.
The correct term is that we're not constantly looking over their shoulders because they've demonstrated a track record of Right.
They call when we need to be there. They give us the 2 days notice. They call my inspector. They tell us exactly what they're doing. They hold their schedule. If they change their schedule, they give us the update. And we're there when we need to be there and not, oh, whoops, or this happened or this occurred. And if it does happen, because it still does with the primary contractors, you know that they're still doing the right thing. You trust them to do those kinds of things. And just so you also know, Chick-fil-A, I was there the entire week, lunch and dinner, on my off hours. 2 to 3 hours during lunch and 2 to 3 hours at dinner for the entire first week to make sure that ran well.
Right.
It ran beautifully.
So it was,
And Craig, you do a great job, and we appreciate all of your hard work and everything you do. I mean, I do believe you go above and beyond, and I want to thank you for that.
thank you. I appreciate that. It is communication. It is effective communication with those contractors to tell them what I expect in the beginning and then help follow that up. I am assaulted on construction sites. I am sworn at. I am swung at. And if I have to go down and shut somebody down and they are trying to beg for forgiveness and they don't want to stop, they will push every single envelope that they can at me to not stop. And they will try to turn, what's the word I'm looking for? They will send letters into the supervisor, say that I did all these things or said these things and try to attack my character on a regular basis.
Including some who've threatened lawsuits, and I said, bring it on.
Right.
Right, because I knew we were right. And of course, they didn't bring it on because they knew they were wrong, right? So
I
like
saw
said-
one of the letters.
Right.
Yeah.
To Rob's point, I mean, we've had many people come in and say how the town is very helpful getting their project through. I mean, I think that was Rob's point. We had one 2 weeks ago who said, how.
Yeah, code, engineering, all part of that
Chris,
together.
Yep.
I think he mentioned Chris and a couple other people by
Janine,
names
I believe was one, yep.
that helped them along with the project. So,
And
yeah,
like I
think
said, the
that
big
was-
thing is that they've got all that stuff ready to go. That helps tremendously, both engineering and building, to your point.
The question on Ward Hill there, the start time's at 7. What time's the finish time?
9.
9.
Like
So
7
there's
and-
some-
They're gone before that.
But is
no,
that noise time, 7
Noise
to
time,
9? I mean,
yes.
if somebody was in there painting till midnight,
correct?
You won't
It's
hear
you
just,
can't do anything.
right.
So
it's
it's
So
only
they-
the noise.
So,
noise.
so these neighbors can expect to hear, the roofing nail, the roofing guns and the things going until 9 o'clock this summer.
Well,
Yes.
No,
Okay.
well, potentially, except that usually contractors don't work those hours.
No, not unless Ron really pushes them to get
Right.
back on schedule.
There might be a
Right.
couple that
not out of the
that they
question.
run 2 shifts, but
Queens
typically
Park.
your shifts are like 7 to 4, 7 to 3.
I have very similar issues on Queens Park. That's a large residential subdivision. 2B is going on right now, and people have been in 2A or Section 1 for a couple of years, and they are hearing consistent roofing day in, day in, day out.
At dark, the roofers are up there in the dark.
Yeah.
I think I
Floodlights.
want my roof done in the dark.
Oh, yeah. Oh, did you mention there's a stop work order on Lehigh?
No, not at the moment, no.
not at
There
the moment?
was.
Okay,
There was.
That's what I
Yeah.
just wanted to.
I stopped work order, but then I threw it over to the DEC because it was a encroachment into the wetland without their permit.
Right. So it was up to the DEC to remediate, to basically say, okay, you've remedied the situation. It wasn't our call. But the instant we found it, we sent it over to the DEC. And they basically try to say, Craig is harassing me. And then my answer was, then why did the DEC violate you?
Shut you down and fine you.
Right.
I just wanted, no, I was just curious if it was current or if it had already, yeah, okay.
No.
thank you.
There's, like I said, that one,
My stop work order actually ran up before they did the DEC correction. I didn't have any oversight to the wetland permit. I don't grant that permit.
right.
I understood that I knew they didn't have their permit and they were encroaching into the wetland, so I handed it off to the DEC. I could not actually stop work order on that. I did a stop work order off their erosion control, which they
Right.
did a corrective action and were able to restart before the DEC came in and shut them down separately.
Right. Anything else on that?
So assuming they get this letter in and do all the corrective actions Tuesday sometime in the afternoon, do we know what time they're gonna be able to start work again?
I honestly, I don't believe I did put that
I
in
can
the
answer
letter.
that question. I can look up when the meeting was on Friday.
11.
11? Then
The
it would
meeting
be,
was at 11 o'clock. We ended, I don't know if it was 12 or
right.
12:30.
So 11 o'clock then on Tuesday.
So Tuesday morning.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow at 11.
I have anything else?
Okay. Mike, you're on.
Yep.
Can I
Bills,
get a motion? Yep, for bills. Can I get a motion for minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the preceding town board workshop meeting on January 11th, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
All right,
Steve, I have one more quick question.
sure.
We have a special use permit hearing on Wednesday to allow outdoor truck parking. I was just wondering as to why that required a special use permit.
Because it's not an allowed use, expressly allowed use in that zoning district. In industrial, both the industrial and the commercial zones have clauses that say things like any other, in industrial would be any other industrial use not expressly denied. That as long as you get a special use permit. So it's essentially a catch-all.
And they will be here. When, will they come in? They'll come in.
I don't know whether
or-
they'll be here in person. They'll either be here on person or virtually. Do you know that answer, Becky? Have you heard from Marlwood?
I do not know that answer off the top of my head. I know Jenny coordinates that, but I do not know if they're going to be in person or virtual.
But the point is, they will be present, whether that's physically or.
They will be here, yes. In one way or another, they will be here.
Thank you.
And that's the one that's on Commerce Drive, correct?
It says 39, but then they crossed it off. They
If-
crossed
next
off
door
number
to it.
39.
I was over there the other
It's an
day.
empty parcel. It's one of those, it's the empty parcel next door to 39 is
Okay.
most likely,
Yeah.
that's usually what happens. We run into the same thing because when we bought the house across the street from my father-in-law, it's 300 Brooks Road and there's an empty parcel next door that has no street address. So,
But they own 39 also, it looked like. They own both parcels.
yes.
They own both parcels. That was
Yep.
it
At
was
least,
something I was not entirely clear on.
at least it appeared to be on, from the map they show.
Right. I can verify that on the county system, but I believe they own both parcels.
All right.
Does anyone who might still be listening and know that answer? Chris or Kevin, by any chance? Guess not.
According to them, I mean, when I looked at that
Like
map,
I can pull it up right now if you'd like, or
when I saw the tax ID, and it had both the same name on it, so it
Yeah,
appeared.
yeah, then that indicates, yep.
This is Chris Martin, Director of Engineering and Planning. Yes, the property is owned by the same person. Both properties are owned by the same company. And the one where they want to put the parking lot on is the vacant parcel, which did not have the original building on it.
Sounds good.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? So as I said, we have an executive session. Since we are not going to return to normal session from executive session, we'll adjourn straight from that. So as soon as we have the motion to move to executive session, we will end this recording.
I'll make a motion to move to executive session.
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, we will move to executive session and then adjourn from there.